Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are your West High counselors coming to you from West High in our new offices. If you haven't seen us recently, stop by, say hello. But we're going to talk to you a little bit tonight about college and career readiness. So here's a picture of us. As you can see, we are separated by alpha. Your student is assigned by their last name. So Mr. Bronner, you want to wave real quickly? He has students with the last name A through CI. Megan Johnson is new to us this year. She has CL through HI. Miss Bergman is returning. She has HO through MI. Greg Yoder, he's also returning as well, ML through SA. And my name is Shannon Arkfeld. I have the end of the alphabet, SC through Z. We also have Kayla Johnson, or Russ Johnson and Kayla Strand as our career coordinators and college and career transition specialists. They are not on the call with us tonight, but we will show you their pictures. So tonight you're going to learn a little bit about how to research careers in colleges. This is geared primarily towards our 9th to 11th graders, but we are going to talk about types of colleges, admissions requirements, college credit opportunities that they could earn in high school, standardized testing, what does that look like? When should a student be looking at taking some of that, taking the ACT, SAT, college applications, admission process, financial aid, and just overall general timelines. So when your child starts at West High, we like to have them do some interest inventory surveys for us. We use a platform called Zello. This is our career research platform. And kids get on, they take these during their advisory lessons, which are Wednesday, once a month, approximately. We started them last week. They will get on and they'll take different surveys, and it's going to ask them about their interest, things that they're good at, what do they like, all sorts of different questions. From there, the program kind of puts that all together and it'll say, hey, you might be great at this career based on things you like or things that maybe you're good at. That doesn't mean they have to do it. It just kind of gives them a starting off point. From there, we use the results of the career research platforms, and we talk to them about future plans. We also talk to them about field trips that we may have coming up. So that's just an introduction, a brief introduction to Zello. If you haven't asked your student yet about Zello, please do so. They should have already started this, and they do it each year that they're here at West. Another one is Big Future. You can go on that platform at any time, and it's similar. You'll take interest, your student will take interest inventories and kind of give them an idea of what they might be good at and what they like to do. Other research opportunities that are out there for colleges, there's in-person. So a lot of our students will sign up for West High college rep visits. Those are typically held in our guidance office. We have a college fair in March. That's where we bring in lots of different representatives from the state colleges in surrounding states, so that they can also let students know what they have to offer, what programs, things like that. It could be a university, it could be a community college, it could be a private college. This year, I know they're trying to add some of the trades in there as well. So that'll happen in March. And then also, as your student is getting older, we do encourage some campus visits just so that they can see what's available to them. Of course, the University of Iowa is fantastic at offering visits. You sign up through them, you get to walk around, see the campus, eat in the dining hall, do things as a student would do in their normal day. I highly recommend it if your student thinks, yeah, maybe I want to stay here, maybe I want to go to the University of Iowa. They think they know well, I grew up in Iowa City, I know everything about it, but it's a totally different perspective when you go as a parent and a prospective student and you get to see different things. Iowa State, UNI, they will do it as well. And then there are these other online research companies that any student can use, and you can have access to that at any point in time. If you'd like to have your student get hooked up with a job shadow or an internship, we do have our career coordinators here at West High. Russ Johnson works with City High, Liberty, and West High. He's here on Mondays and Wednesdays. You may have gotten an email from him regarding job shadows and internships. He's a great contact for that if your student is interested in that. He can also help out with lots of other things. Like Kirkwood applications. He's great working with kids that are interested in other avenues, Job Corps, military, all sorts of things. And then Kayla Strand is also a career and college transition counselor. She works with a lot of students that would maybe be a first generation student. She's here on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She also collaborates a lot with Kirkwood Community College, but she can work with any smaller college, private colleges. And then they both of them are fantastic when it comes to offering advice regarding FAFSA. And we'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay, so I'm going to take over and talk about a couple little more complicated things. So as you'll even just visually see, there are so many ways for students to earn college credit while they're still in high school. It's essentially broken down into three main categories. Classes you can take through Kirkwood, which is our community college. Classes that are housed in our building, so at West High. And then also classes that students can take at the University of Iowa. I would say our most popular option is students taking classes through Kirkwood. And within Kirkwood, there are two different ways to do that. You can do what's called a Kirkwood Academy, or you are also eligible to sign up for just singular courses as well. So Kirkwood Academies are truly designed for our 11th and 12th graders. 10th graders can take them also. It just gets a little tricky in terms of scheduling and making sure that you're also meeting your graduation requirements. But those academies are designed really for 11th and 12th graders. They're groups of college classes. So for example, you may sign up for a pre-med one or a business one, an education, or even just a general liberal arts. So that typically includes 4 classes, which is the equivalent of 12 credits or about 1 semester's worth of credit. And you would take 2 classes in the fall and then 2 classes in the spring. Those classes are actually housed at the Regional Center, which is off of Oakdale Boulevard in Coralville. So students might spend their mornings there from 7:30 to 9 a.m. and then come to West High. Or they might spend their mornings at West High and then go spend their afternoon from 12:30 to 2 at Kirkwood. So again, it's kind of like it's a dual enrollment. You're spending part of your day at the Regional Center and then part of your day here. Another reason we recommend it for 11th and 12th graders is also just due to transportation, right? So as parents, you're probably driving your freshmen and sophomores around. So it's just a logistically easier for families to do it during that time as well. You can also just do a single class. So let's say you're really interested in taking a sign language course. You can go ahead and do that as well. Another really popular one is doing essentially what's called a speech class, which students pair with an English class that they can take with us. And most of those tend to be online and you'll register for those individually. All of Kirkwood is free, which is really great. It also is very complicated because there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. So if you really want your student to take one or multiple Kirkwood courses, it's really important that they work with their school counselor during registration time, which is January or February, to kind of plan out applications, the classes they might take, and how that would work with their West High schedule. In the middle, you'll see courses that are actually housed at West High. So again, we have some dual enrollment things with Kirkwood. The most popular one here is composition. So that counts as a junior or senior level English, and then it also counts towards part of their English requirement at the university. Again, that's totally free. What's cool about doing that here is that it's a period in their day, just like any other class. right? So even though you're taking a Kirkwood level course, it's scheduled in your day just like any other course at West High would be. Again, completely free. We also have Project Lead the Way classes, which tend to be more hands-on and in the engineering field or computer science field. Same thing, it's a class during your school day, but you also get Kirkwood credit for that, also completely free. We also have advanced placement. We actually have 29 different AP exams and courses that you can take here, which is a lot. So the course itself is free. But if you want to try to earn college credit, then you'll take an exam in May. And there is a cost associated with taking that exam. This year, each exam is $99. But when you compare that to taking a class for $1,500 at the university, it really tends to make sense for a lot of our kids. And I think we have an 87% pass rate. So students who take AP classes tend to do really, really well on those exams and earn college credit. A lot of our really high achieving students also take AP coursework because colleges will look for that, particularly if you're planning on applying to something out of state or more highly selective. Finally, just really briefly, we also have students that take what's called PSEO, so post-secondary enrollment option through the University of Iowa. You have to meet really robust criteria. So with Kirkwood, for the most part, you're able to take them no matter what, with a handful of exceptions. At the University of Iowa, you have to meet a minimum GPA requirement, you have to meet their admissions requirement, and you'll work in coordination with an academic advisor at the university. A general rule for those university coursework is that you have to be through the AP or the most advanced level of coursework we offer in our district to be eligible to take classes at the university. Most commonly, students have finished like AP Calculus BC, which is the highest level of math that we offer here. So they may move on and take Calc 3 and linear algebra. Or maybe they finished AP Computer Science and they move on to the university to take discrete structures. So PSEO at the university is a lot different than taking classes at Kirkwood. Again, it's super important that if you are talking about having students do dual enrollment, it starts their college transcript. So it's really important that you're working with your school counselor, you're talking with your student, and you're making sure that they're ready for that rigor of starting their college transcript.
Kelly, there was one question already in the Q&A about,
Okay.
do most colleges accept AP courses?
Yes, most of them do. It's pretty standard across the nation and kind of the world. When you take an AP exam, it's scored on a scale from 1 to 5. If a student earns a 4 or a 5, generally speaking, they will earn college credit. AP tends to transfer a little better than Kirkwood, particularly if you're talking about going out of state. But again, that's just a very general rule. We know a lot more of the ins and outs and all of these things. So if you work with us and kind of tell us what your end goal is, we'll be able to advise you on what your best way is to move forward with that. I also get to talk about the fun stuff, standardized testing. So probably a lot of your kids today took either the pre-ACT or the PSAT. And I kind of want to give a shout out to a lot of your kids. Most of them were probably in there and they did so wonderful today. So shout out to your kids as well who were there. Standardized testing is actually really important. Most students should plan to take the real ACT or SAT, so not the practice test, but the college admissions exam, typically during their junior year, and again, typically in the spring of their junior year. A lot of colleges are doing what's called test optional, which means that a school does not require an ACT or an SAT score for admissions, but they will require it in order to maximize the amount of financial aid or money that the college will give you to attend. So for example, if you have a solid GPA of, let's say, a 3.8, you're going to be able to be admitted to the University of Iowa, for example, but they may not give you as much merit-based scholarship money if they don't have a test score. So this is why we recommend that all kids, if they're planning on going to a four-year college, plan on taking an ACT or an SAT. So you'll see on that chart that all colleges take both, they're just a little bit different. So for example, today our 10th graders took the practice ACT exam. It currently has 4 different sections: English, math, reading, and science. But they're actually getting rid of the science here, I think in the spring. So it'll just be 3 different sections. The score for that is averaged amongst all 3 or 4 of those sections. So if you maybe score a little lower on one of them, the other 2 or 3 can kind of back you up. And again, it's just more common in the Midwest. Obviously, we have that here in Iowa City, so the ACT just tends to be more of a common test to take when you live in the Midwest. The SAT is actually 2 different sections, just English and a math. And the score is a sum. So if you didn't score well on one of those sections, it's actually going to hurt your total score because they're adding those 2 scores together instead of averaging them together. And then again, they just tend to be more common on the coast, so on the East Coast and the West Coast. Again, every college is going to take an ACT or an SAT. It really is just a matter of where your strengths are as a student, particularly in the math section. And again, we can help advise your student on which test might be better, or if they want to take both and kind of figure out how to navigate that. Again, testing should ideally start in the spring of your junior year, and you should have it done by around this time, usually December at the latest of your senior year. So there's about a 9-month range where you'll kind of take these exams for real. And no more than 2 or 3 times to take each one total. Again, can't stress enough, super important when you start talking about college credit and standardized testing, please work with us because we have a lot of knowledge about it and we'll be able to advise your individual student.
Again, there were a couple questions about the practice tests. Specific one was practice tests. Are we offering the pre-ACT or PSAT again? Unfortunately, it's a big undertaking, and we're basically pulling kids out of class for the kids that actually tested today. And so we try to be, it's a delicate balance. We're not looking to take kids out of class more often than we have to. And so this is the one and only day that we do the PSAT, and that's a college board thing. We're not allowed to do it more than once. And then the pre-ACT, we only offer that to our sophomores on the same day. So I think there was maybe one more chat question.
Yep, I saw something about test prep. There are lots of options out there. You'll find a lot of free things. You'll also find a lot of options that are going to cost a significant amount of money. Other counselors maybe chime in on this one. I'm a big believer that try the free practice materials, take the exam, see how it goes, right? Then you're going to have a better idea of where you should be spending your time studying. Maybe you scored really well in one section, but not in the others. And then so you can kind of supplement that way. That is what I advise my students. So I don't know if anyone else has any different advice on that.
And I think too, any practice is good practice, so that free practice is good. I did see in there too, asking about guidebooks. So I believe our library may have some guidebooks for checkout. And then obviously, Amazon will have a lot of options anywhere from, $20 to maybe $60 for guidebooks. And then, your typical bookstores, Barnes and Noble, things like that would have guidebooks as well.
And the Coralville Public Library, when my daughter was preparing, she actually checked one out through the Coralville Public Library. So they're all over, and one does not have to go out and actually purchase it to utilize it. So
as long as your student is practicing the math section, there tends to be a lot of things on there that students just haven't seen in a while. There's pre-algebra, there's algebra 1, there's geometry. So just kind of going through those things again to refresh your memory. And then also just making sure that you have timing down, right? So it is a timed exam. So if you sit down and take a practice test, just make sure that you're timing yourself and you have an idea of if you're going too fast or too slow. If you can get a handle on those 2 things, our kids score really, really well. I think I'm turning it over to Ms. Johnson.
All right, and I'm going to get the college applications and admissions process part of the presentation started. So to start with, we wanted to talk a little bit about the different types of colleges that your students will have the opportunity to apply to, and then what in general their admission requirements are. So you have the private and sometimes highly selective universities all the way down to the vocational and technical schools. There's kind of 3 key differences between the different types of colleges. One being the types of degrees that students can earn. A second big difference being the amount that they cost, or the amount of tuition. And then a third big difference being their admission requirements. So I'll touch on each of those things. So whether or not it's a public or private university and whether or not it's highly selective or not, those are going to be the colleges where students can get the 4-year bachelor's degrees, as well as more advanced degrees after they finish their undergrad. Big differences between these will be the cost of tuition. So if the school is private or highly selective, you're probably looking at a higher tuition cost. And then the public universities have lower tuition, especially if they were to go to an in-state school as an in-state student. With admissions requirements, the highly selective universities and private universities will tend to have different requirements, but consider kind of the same thing. So we won't necessarily be able to speak to their specific requirements, but things that they'll look at would be their standardized test scores, ACT and SAT or SAT, GPA, the coursework and kind of the rigor of the coursework that they took in high school. They'll likely require essays or personal statements and letters of recommendation. And they'll probably also look at things like extracurricular activities, both involvement as well as achievements in those activities. With the public universities, it's probably a little bit more straightforward of an admissions process. For example, with the Iowa universities, they use something called the Regents Admissions Index, which basically takes a student's ACT or SAT score, their GPA, and then the number of RAI approved courses. And if a student exceeds kind of their minimum threshold, then they are admitted. Kelly did mention that the Iowa universities are test optional technically, so you don't have to have that ACT or SAT score to get admitted, but then the admissions process does look a little bit differently. And then we have the community colleges, which will offer the 2-year degrees, associate's degrees, as well as vocational certificates. You can often transfer the credits that are earned at community colleges, such as Kirkwood, to 4-year schools. So that's one kind of thing to recognize. Students can certainly start out at a community college, even if their ultimate goal is to attend a 4-year school. Iowa has 15 community colleges. They do tend to be more affordable and they have open admission policies, which basically means that if a student has graduated from high school, they'll be admitted to the community college. Vocational and technical schools are similar in that they can offer vocational certificates, but kind of the goal of going to one of these would be to prepare a student for a specific occupation or trade. They also have open admission like community colleges. So if a student has a high school diploma, then they would be accepted. And there's around 40 of those in the state of Iowa. And then the other thing that I'm going to talk about is the different college application platforms. So there's the Common Application, which we often just call Common App. And then students can also apply through the individual college that they are hoping to attend. The Common App is kind of a one-stop shop where students can apply to multiple 4-year colleges and manage their applications for all of them in one spot. So this is best for students that are applying to several colleges. And oftentimes the colleges that they're applying to would include perhaps both private and public and highly selective as well as in-state schools. The Common App does typically require essays and letters of recommendation. But it is a kind of good tool for students who are applying to a lot of schools, even 4 or 5 schools, depending on what they are, up to we see students apply for 20 schools sometimes. If a student is just planning to apply to a couple of colleges, or particularly if they're planning to apply to the in-state public universities, then there really isn't, it's not necessary for them to use the Common App, and they might actually end up doing more work than they have to if they go through the Common App. So it's important to remember that you can still apply to colleges through their individual college applications, which just means that the application is done right through the college. It still tends to be online, but it likely will not require essays or letters of recommendation. So sometimes we have students who are writing essays and getting letters of recommendation that they actually don't need for the college application, because they opt to use Common App when they don't need to do that. If you're talking about a community college, then you definitely want to be using that community college's individual college application to apply.
Thank you, Megan. Greg Yoder, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the day when your child maybe becomes a senior, and there are some things that they have to think about in order to get themselves to school. So we're going to start talking about essays. First of all, the thing that everybody kind of needs to know is not every institution is going to require an essay in order to attend. And these were basically stolen from Iowa College Access Network, which is kind of just up the road. And they actually did a presentation on a Monday evening in our little theater for our seniors, talking about FAFSA and financial aid, which was super helpful. They are the experts in a lot of areas. And so it's nice to have that resource so close by. So when writing an essay, they kind of talk about a process like anything else. And when a student goes through the process of writing a paper, these are some of the very similar things to what they would have to do, right? Generating ideas, making an outline, write a rough draft, review and edit your draft, and make final changes. The big thing that we encourage with students come to us looking for additional insight as to maybe what they should do, the big thing for us is be yourself. Have your own voice. Make sure that you're telling your story from your perspective. There's not a lot of, don't be somebody who you are not necessarily. So, and then just making sure that you're putting in the necessary amount of time and energy into it, and not just winging it, and not just making something up on the fly. Take pride in your work, just like many of our students do as they go through every day here at school. So again, the essay, last phrase there, is just one part of the college application process. A unique and personal essay gives you an opportunity to stand out from others who maybe have similar, backgrounds and similar grades and GPAs and ACT scores and some of those things. So it's just super helpful when they're going through that process, that they put in the necessary time and energy into doing something good. So when we talk about letters of recommendation, it's not required for everybody who plans to go off to a four-year college. What I like to have happen is anytime a student has interest in applying to a school that requires letters of recommendation, first of all, they're going to have a couple different letters of recommendation from teachers. And then additionally, their counselor will have to provide a letter of recommendation, as well as uploading a transcript in their schedule. What we find that's super helpful. Unfortunately, we don't see your children every day. I wish we did, because the sheer number of kids that we have on our caseload, we don't get that opportunity to see them daily. So for me, I know when we don't see them every day, it's super helpful to have something along the lines of either a resume or a brag sheet that outlines who they are and what they've done during their high school years. It could be regarding different groups that they've been a part of, extracurricular activities that they've been involved with. If they work outside of school, I like to know that. It demonstrates to me that they have work ethic and they stick with things. If they're involved within their community or church or an outside agency and they give of their time, A lot of times students can record silver court hours, and that just goes to demonstrate that I have put in a lot of time and energy into this, and I'm not just a student who cranks out A's, right? Who does well in the classroom, but I am this whole person. And so colleges really like to see that students are well-rounded and that they have things that they're passionate about and things that they find rewarding. And so those are really positive things to be able to demonstrate to others. And so that brag sheet, it could be as simple as an outline of different things. I've got about 10 of them sitting on my desk right now as I have to, oops, push the wrong button there. As I have to write some letters of recommendation. It is that season. Pretty much from now until Thanksgiving, we're going to be writing quite a few letters of recommendation for our students who are applying to colleges that have some selectivity. And so it's super helpful for me to get those resumes or brag sheets where I can look at it, kind of draw some conclusions from that, but then I like to actually have the student come and sit in and visit with me. And then I can ask them some specific questions. What are you planning to study? What are some things that you recognize maybe during your high school years that have really allowed you to grow? And it's quite remarkable to hear the stories from kids as to how, in their own mind, the growth that they've made over the last 3 and 4 years. It's pretty remarkable, actually. The other thing I would strongly encourage students to do is to be proactive, like anything else. And so if there's a deadline that is November 1st, make sure that your child is not visiting with their counselor, hey, can you write me a recommendation letter 2 days prior to that? Ideally, it's at minimum like 2 weeks, and sooner would be better. And because as I said, I have about 10 that I need to write on my desk, and I know all the rest of us all have similar, and many of the teachers that kids will ask, those teachers also have many students that they're being asked to write letters of recommendation for. And it's just super courteous to allow time so that teachers and counselors can make sure that they're doing some of those things in a timely manner and they're not getting backed up and getting 5 of them all on the last day. So it's always good to plan ahead, essentially. So then this next slide kind of talks about the difference between a brag sheet and a resume. So they're both very similar. It's very hard in kids' nature to be boastful and talk about themselves. It kind of goes against everything that maybe they grew up knowing about or doing. And so, a brag, it take a couple different forms. It doesn't have to be a formal resume, but basically anything that highlights the different things that they've been a part of and the things that they've spent time with during their high school years. It just is super helpful to have it all listed in one place, because then it's kind of a resource that we can act on as we're going to write these letters of recommendation. Because as we write these letters, we only want to do best by your children, and we only want to help them in their goal of pursuing a higher education. And so we want to put the time and energy into it to help them get where they want to be. Okay. All right.
All righty. So I'm going to touch on some application timelines. 2 big dates that you guys should definitely take note of. One is August 1st. A lot of applications, including the Common App, will open on August 1st. So kind of that late summer date. And so for private or highly selective universities, so when I talk about that, the first ones that kind of come to mind are those Ivy League schools, Harvard, Princeton, and then, some others out west like Stanford, UC Berkeley, just kind of, those more highly selective universities when we talk about that. The other date right there is November 1st. So with those private or highly selective schools and those public universities like Iowa, Iowa State, UNI, University of Minnesota, University of Wisconsin, Another, important date there is that November 1st date. So if your student plans on applying early action, that November 1st is that deadline there. And we also encourage a lot of students to get things done before November 1st, no matter where they're applying. That way, Mr. Yoder kind of touched on being able to get things in on a timely manner, being able to write those recommendation letters, with our best foot forward, so we can get those to your students. And then from there, in the spring, we'll have, especially for like the University of Iowa, we'll have a representative come in and help students who plan on going to the University of Iowa, and help them work on housing and other, kind of small things that students may have forgot about. And that will come usually March, April timeframe. So yeah. All right. So paying for college, FAFSA, and scholarships. So for the national scholarships, so many of these are large sum scholarships. A lot of times, the one that we work with the most is probably QuestBridge, and that's designed for high achieving, low income students. It's a very selective scholarship as well. And so, like I said, we see a lot, or not. I'm sorry, not a lot, but we do see a few QuestBridge scholarship applications come across our desk. And then touching on FAFSA, everybody's favorite. So this is the free application for federal student aid. This application will open up this year in December during the senior year of high school, and this uses the parents' tax information from the past year. Having Russ Johnson and Kayla Strand, they know a lot about Kayla's worked in financial aid, and so they are very familiar with this. And so we are very lucky to have them in our office. And so, once it gets to, your student's senior year, if you have any questions about that, we could definitely connect you with them. The FAFSA can get kind of confusing sometimes. And we also set up different events throughout the year too, where we have ICANN come in and help parents and students one-on-one to get that filled out correctly. And then looking at that institutional scholarships column, so this is free money given directly from the college or university to the student. This is typically based off of the student's GPA and test scores, so it's based off of their merit. And a lot of times they automatically qualify based upon application. So one of the ones I can think of, from the University of Iowa, is the Iowa Scholars Award. So this is scholarship money from $500 all the way to $8,500. And it can be renewed each year as well. And like I said, it's automatically, or students can automatically qualify for a certain amount of money based off of their merit, so their GPA and test scores. And then local scholarships. So our counseling office works a lot with these, the local scholarships. So this is free money given by local organizations. And we have a list available on our West High website. So if you go to the Iowa City West High School website, click on school counseling, you'll be able to see a list there of the scholarships that are available. As the year goes on, more and more scholarships come across our desk and we put those on the website. So right now we're starting to kind of get a little bit more scholarships kind of roll in where we're putting those on our website. So definitely keep an eye out for there. And with these local scholarships, some have some more general requirements or more specific requirements. So another example of a local scholarship, there is a family who gives money to a West High student who wants to go to UNI to study education. So again, kind of a more specific requirement there. And a lot of these are awarded at senior awards night. towards the end of April, beginning of May, we usually host that senior awards.
Sorry, that's my slide. So what if college is not in your child's plan? Well, there's a lot of different options. And back to that previous slide, I can probably take it back. Let me see here. One other thing we didn't mention that I point out to kids all the time who opt to take some of those academies and dual credit classes through Kirkwood or even AP courses. A lot of times kids are working at, if they're accruing college credits while they're in high school, in essence, they are earning their own scholarship while they're a student in high school. Because if they accrue 15 credits, that's a semester worth of college that they essentially pay for before they ever walk out the doors of West High. So that's something else that doesn't make it onto these slides, but I think it is definitely something that should be pointed out as well. So what if college is not in my plan? Back to that slide. There's lots of other opportunities that exist for students, apprenticeships, and Russ Johnson is super involved with this process for a lot of our kids. A lot of times based on the Zello that we talked about at the very beginning, interest inventories and skill surveys and those kinds of things. Based on how kids answer and some of the careers they indicate that they might want to do someday, he starts kind of short with a short list of kids that maybe they want to be an electrician, or maybe they want to be a glazer, and maybe they don't even know what a glazer is, but it installs the windows that are right behind me. And so there's lots of different opportunities that exist for kids that where students can make a really, really good living if they know they're not in it. They don't want to go to college for 4 years, or they don't want to go to college for 2 years. They'd really like to get out into the world of work right away, to do kind of an apprenticeship for a couple of years, working underneath somebody, and then they could potentially get a union card and they could go anywhere across the United States and or the world and get paid a really good salary and always have lots of options for different jobs that would come up. Additionally, there's the military. There's lots of different certificate programs, a really good part-time job for high school students and or college students. If a student has an interest in becoming a nurse or a healthcare related field, would be that of a CNA. CNA stands for Certified Nurse's Assistant. They could, once they get their CNA certificate, they could start working in a nursing home, for example. The nursing homes employ a lot of CNAs, and they could, it's a great resume builder. It's a great part-time job as they're working their way through college, potentially to earn like an RN degree, a registered nurse. So lots of different opportunities there. Additionally, there are different community programs, Job Corps, K-PACE, vocational rehabilitation. There's lots of other resources that exist for kids that, traditional college maybe is not their thing. And so if you ever, or your children ever have any questions about, I know I don't want to do this, but maybe I might have interest in doing this. Those are great conversations we love to have with kids all the time. And so please don't hesitate to, if you don't know who to get in contact with, please reach out. We'd love to help you guys make the necessary referral to get you guys the information that you need so that you can make informed decisions for your children as they get to the age when they're moving on from high school. Okay. And then this is just kind of an overall timeline of some things that it's good to kind of keep in mind, right? So we've got a couple different columns here, working with 9th grade first. We encourage students to really focus on the transition to high school, get involved in different things. There's a lot of different clubs, organizations that exist at West High. We encourage students to really get off to a strong foot, because once you kind of set the tempo as far as what kind of a student you're going to be, what kind of study habits you're going to be, it's a lot easier to maintain those than to magically come up with those 3 years down the road when you're starting to feel the pressure of, am I going to get into college or not? It's really a lot easier to start off strong than it is to try and bring up your GPA after a full year or two of maybe not being the best student. Through those Zello lessons, when you look at winter, we encourage students to really start looking at some different careers. If students don't have any idea what they want to do, we actually offer a class through our business department called Futures, which we would strongly encourage students to do. We are actually here in about a week, 2 weeks, going to be taking all the freshmen to an event called Career Inspire that Russ Johnson is helping to organize. Looking forward to, seeing some of the light bulbs turn on for a lot of kids as they see some of these different things that maybe they haven't ever considered before. So a lot of neat opportunities out there. And then their job shadows are, I think the fall application timeline is kind of past, but there is an opportunity that students could do a job shadow in the spring. And so that is something that we would strongly encourage students to take advantage of. Sometimes, while it's great to really click into that one career that you know you're destined to do, sometimes it's a process of elimination where, oh, I think I want to be this. And then you get out there and you do a job shadow and you realize, well, that's nothing like I thought it was going to be. And I think there's a lot of truth in learning some things that maybe you don't want to do the rest of your life. Moving on to the 10th grade, we just got done taking the pre-ACT today, kind of just a practice ACT. Again, continuing to research different careers. Right before winter break, we will be doing the career caravan. Where we will take all of our sophomores to hear a couple different people speak on some different careers. So kids get a chance to indicate what their top choices are, and then they'll actually hear a couple different opportunities of them speaking actually. And this is my path and how I got to this, and this is what I went to school for, and these are the things I do on a daily basis. And so that's super helpful. We've always gotten a lot of positive feedback from that. And then again, job shadow opportunities in the spring. Junior year is when we offer the PSAT in the fall. At some point, students can take the ACT or an SAT if they're planning to go to college. I would encourage folks to ensure that they have either completed or they've almost completed the ACT or that completed Algebra 2 before they take the ACT, just because there is Algebra 2 on those assessments. And so it can be super helpful. And we don't like kids feeling frustrated. And if they were to take an ACT and a whole slew of the questions, they've never even seen concepts like that before, we don't like students being more frustrated than they have to be. So do keep that in mind. That's sometimes a determining factor as to when students should try to take an ACT, whether they've completed Algebra 2 or not. And then junior year, again, start really looking around at some different colleges. Again, the college fair is in the spring of a student's junior year. It's a great opportunity to see a whole bunch of colleges all at the same time, get on some mailing lists. Students can do job shadows again. In the spring of their junior year, they can actually start doing college visits. And so any opportunity where we don't have school, that kids could actually go out onto a college campus and see what a college campus is like when students are in session, I think that's so much more helpful than just going to walk through a college campus in the summertime when nobody's around. There's just a different feeling on a college campus when the students are there. And so every opportunity kids can have to have a real natural experience with that, I think, is super helpful. Okay. Last slide that we have here is additional questions. We just have this posted here. If you have any additional questions that you would like to ask, you can post, it'll take you to a Google form. You can ask those questions. We will respond to them. It might not be yet tonight, but we would for sure follow up with you probably via email, unless we feel like the question is a little too complex for us to answer in an email. We might just pick up the phone and have a phone conversation with you. So just kind of depends on the nature of the question. But as always, we are here to try and meet the needs of your children, you just simply need to ask. We would love to be of assistance. We'd love to actually, we will be seeing your students for sure in when we talk about course registration for, and that will be in usually January, February. But every opportunity that we have to visit with kids and parents is great. Now is the time that we're kind of requesting to have some meetings with some kids, and we always welcome parents during those meetings. If you want to try to set something up where it works for everybody's schedule, we welcome that. College has evolved a little bit. The Common App probably wasn't a thing when I was going to college. It's evolved a little bit. Maybe it was around when Trey was applying, but that's a little bit of a different story. Sorry, Trey's the young guy. I have to pick on him sometimes. But if you have any questions, we'd love to help you out, however that might be. But I think that's going to conclude things for us, unless I missed anything, guys.
Thank you all for attending.
Yes, thank you very much. Have a great evening.